I'm Peggy Runnels, 30, married to James Becker, and quietly allergic to attention. Not the dramatic kind that pines for applause, the practical kind that notices when someone else gets the spotlight and assumes the room will always stay lit for them. My life looks ordinary on the surface. 2 kids who can recite school lunch menus like scripture, a house that pays itself off a little at a time, a closet full of well-made clothes without logos screaming for notice. I like it that way. I like the stability. I like that our mortgage sits quietly in the background like a reliable roommate. Growing up, I was the family's fallback. There were siblings with names you heard before award ceremonies. Loud, ambitious, good at making their wins into headlines at Thanksgiving. I learned early the art of not making a scene. Fold, pass the gravy, smile for the camera while everyone crowded around whoever had the next big thing. Being steady looked like a personality trait on my resume. Adaptable, dependable, competent. It also looked invisible at family dinners when somebody else's promotion drowned out the small mention of mine. James and I did the adult math. Budget, save, pick the things that actually mattered. No flashy parties, no posts that screamed for attention, but private school tuition that lets our kids keep their curiosity, a mortgage paid down enough to sleep soundly, a car that doesn't need to be announced by an audience. There's a satisfaction in quiet wealth, an efficiency to it, but it's not a shield against being overlooked. Money solved a lot of problems, but it didn't teach my parents how to notice me. What's at stake isn't a TV-worthy inheritance or a dramatic betrayal. It's a little more corrosive. 30 years of small omissions adding up like interest. A missed birthday text, a family group chat that scrolls past my life without a pause. I've watched my siblings turn their lives into a headline machine and wondered when, if ever, our family would stop measuring love by loudness. The real risk here isn't financial. It's the slow, odd loneliness of being the person whose milestones everyone remembers politely, if they remember them at all. That's the ledger I'm balancing now, and I'm not sure I want to keep doing the math in private anymore. I told James I was going to the dealership like I was going to pick up groceries, calm, practical, and with no intention of making a scene. He looked at me over his coffee and smiled the way he always does when I do something quietly theatrical, half proud, half worried. "You sure?" he asked. I was. We'd crunched the numbers months ago, penciled the purchase into the fun money column, and then ignored it like a guilty pleasure. The car wasn't about desperation. It was about punctuation. I wanted to close a sentence my family had been leaving open for 30 years. The showroom felt theatrical in all the wrong ways. Spotlights hovering like interrogation lamps, a polished black floor that reflected the newest models like altarpieces. I ran my hand along Napa leather the way someone reads the spine of a book they don't want to finish. Slowly, deliberately. The top trim felt ridiculous in the best way. Buried speakers that made the world feel edited, a panoramic roof that let the sky in without letting anyone else crowd it, and controls so smugly tactile they practically demanded an Instagram close-up. The salesperson, Carlos, walked me through features like a stage director. I signed the papers with calm hands and then sat in the driver's seat and laughed at how quiet it was inside. That silence tasted like permission. At home, I told the kids we were going for a big errand. They asked if we were getting ice cream, the one we actually did. James helped buckle everyone into a rental and pretended not to be delighted as I eased the new car into our driveway. It felt absurd, like wearing a tuxedo to fold laundry. But when the kids piled into the back and declared it the comfiest car in history, the absurdity softened into a private, ridiculous joy. This was mine. A small, expensive island I'd bought for reasons that had nothing to do with utility and everything to do with being seen. Posting the photo was performative and perfectly calibrated. I took one shot at dusk, the car catching the last pale light, my hand on the wheel, the neighborhood's holly bushes like background props. My caption was short and not celebratory in the way my siblings would be. Tasteful, dry, a little wry. I debated a snarky line, "Apparently I'm the adult now," but landed on a cleaner tone. If I wanted them to notice, I was going to do it in a language they recognized, an image, polished and public, the same currency my siblings traded in when they wanted to prove a life was winning. Likes came predictably slow at first, then faster. Friends, colleagues, a cousin I only knew by the occasional holiday photo. Messages started trickling in from James's side of the family. Praise, clinking silver emojis, the sort of quick, delighted responses that made me feel simultaneously modest and vindicated. The family group chat in my phone, the digital hearth of my childhood, remained stubbornly silent. The 3 blue dots that normally announce the family's collective thumbs up never appeared. I watched those bubbles like someone monitoring a small dam, waiting for it to break. It was a strange, sharp feeling, watching the proof of something you'd long suspected, bright as a neon sign. It wasn't the absence of a birthday wish that stung as much as the pattern. The way my life could be running quietly and correctly and still be invisible. I'd never wanted people to know the balance of our accounts or the specifics of our vacations. I wanted them to notice that I existed on the same axis as their loud successes, that my steady was also worth acknowledging. James put an arm around my shoulder and said nothing for a long minute. "You did it," he said finally, not like a question. I wanted to tell him I hadn't done it to spite them, that I'd done it for me. Part of that was true. Another part of me wanted to see if a photograph could rewrite how my family measured me, if a single public moment could smudge 30 little omissions into something readable. I locked the screen and put the phone face down on the kitchen counter. I went to bed with the house smelling faintly of new leather and manicured grass, and the quiet, electric possibility that tonight might finally be different. The door opened before I could knock. Charlotte Runnels, my mother, was there in a sweater that smelled faintly of lemon-scented cleaner and guilt. Henry, my father, hovered behind her like a man who wanted to be useful but wasn't sure how. The living room looked like someone had tried to assemble a party from whatever was left in the house. A half-inflated banner that read "Happy 30-ish," a cluster of mismatched balloons, store cupcakes with uneven swirls of frosting. Daniel, my brother, the one who always has the quick laugh and the faster excuses, was mid-applause as if someone had just announced a magician's reveal. Claire sat on the sofa with her cross-legged calm, phone already in hand, ready to document the momentum. They greeted me with the careful, breathless energy of people who had been told to be surprised quickly and then behave as if they'd been planning it for weeks. "Peggy," my mother said, and for an instant I could see the panic. Behind the practiced cheer. Sorry we missed your birthday. We wanted." She trailed off and handed me a paper plate with a cupcake like an offering across a rift. There was relief on their faces because they had prepared the script. Apology, applause, affable ignorance that this moment might need more than words. They'd hoped the cake would smooth over the smell of 30 years of small slights. "Thank you," I said and sat. The couch felt too soft, like an audience seat in the wrong theater. They fawned over the car post the way people fawn over a dog that learned a new trick. Familiar admiration without real curiosity. "It's gorgeous," Claire said, tilting her head in a medical way, like she was appraising a species sample. Daniel clapped me on the shoulder with the confidence of someone who'd always been allowed to direct traffic in our family's emotional intersection. "We saw your post. Congratulations." "Thanks," I said. I could feel the room closing in with all the things unsaid. I'd rehearsed a simple path through this. Accept the belated cake, hear their apology, head home. But the post was still warm in my pocket. The small, public punctuation I'd left online had done what I'd half expected. It started a conversation, and I had not come to let them steer it back into the well-worn grooves. "Look, Peggy," Dad said, Henry, his voice trying to be both earnest and commanding. We messed up." "We didn't." He stopped, searching for the right words like someone trying to pick up a fragile vase without knowing its weight. What I said next was quiet but deliberate. "I didn't come for cake," I told them. "I came because you called. The silence that followed felt like I dropped a rock into a glass of still water. They had called an emergency meeting. That was the honest truth. Someone had seen my post and decided the optics were worth the effort. Someone had finally noticed, and they wanted to fix the headline. Daniel laughed a little too loudly. "It's just posting a car? We didn't know it would." "You saw the car," I interrupted. "You didn't see my birthday." I let the sentence hang there and then reached into my bag. I pulled out a small stack of prints, photographs, screenshots, captions. I had made them the night before, not out of malice, but because I needed a way to make the pattern legible. On the top of the pile was a screen capture of my Instagram post. The car in the dusk. My hand on the wheel. The caption I'd chosen. Below it were other images, my siblings' posts over the years, one after another, each crowned with a chorus of hearts and comments from mom and dad. There were promotions celebrated in caps lock, grad photos, travel reels. There were their birthdays with dozens of replies, aunts chiming in, cousins tagging. And there, in stark contrast, were the years that marked my own birthdays. Nothing. No notifications. No in-thread celebrations. A blankness where the family's voice should have been. I put the pile on the coffee table like someone setting down evidence. "I printed these so we could look at them together," I said, "because I think you believe you've been paying attention. But attention isn't what I got." Charlotte's hands trembled. Henry's shoulders collapsed in a half bow. Daniel's face went from playful to flinty. Claire's eyes tracked the stack like a scientist observing a surprising specimen. "This is petty," Daniel blurted. "You couldn't have. This is public." "It's our public," I said. "You taught me how to read the currency here." I didn't mean it to sting, but it did. Likes, comments, the way you celebrate loud things. I used that currency to see if it would buy me the attention I've been denied privately. There was a shuffle of feet. Someone knocked over a balloon. Grandma's antique clock in the foyer, which had been wound by some ancestor with more faith in the future, clicked on like it was listening. My parents' apologies began the way they always did, soft, practiced. "We're so sorry, Peggy. We didn't realize." They said the words that people say when they are surprised by the harm of their own habits. Daniel tried to explain away in a breathless tumble of rationalizations. Work was hectic, he'd sent birthday wishes in private, he'd texted, and maybe there was a ghost in his phone. It was the old defensive dance. Minimize, distract, charm. I was tired of being the one who smoothed the rugs after other people's storms. I wanted them to see without me being the one who asked, pleaded, or explained. So I did what I'd already done online. I made it public, and I made it hard to chalk up to forgetting. I took another print out of my bag. It was a simple table I'd compiled. Dates across the top, names down the side, check marks where someone had publicly celebrated someone else's milestone. I'd spent an evening cross-referencing posts, comments, and family group chat threads. It was absurd to some and accurate to me. My handwriting on the margin read, 30 years, 30 chances. "You kept track?" Claire asked, incredulous. "I did," I said, because the pattern mattered. Now the room shifted. This wasn't just a missed text, it was a habit exposed. My parents' apology felt thinner than the paper I'd laid out. Daniel's smile tightened into something resembling a wince. He reached for humor, and humor failed him. "It's about being seen," I said softly, and this time I saw the words land. Not about money, not about likes. About the fact that your calendar always had space for someone else's headline and not mine. I'm tired of being the understudy applauding the lead. Henry's face went slack. There was a moment where he looked at each of us and seemed to count something only he could see. "Peggy," he began. "We..." "Stop," I said. "I don't want another apology that lives in the air for 5 minutes and then evaporates. I've had enough evaporations." I set my jaw. The room had gotten unbearably small, the air suddenly dense with all the unfinished conversations of years. I don't want to be the person you dust off when something else doesn't stick. I either get the same space and noise you give the others, or I change the relationship. There was stunned silence. Charlotte blinked like someone waking up from a faint, and then the watering of eyes began. Not the theatrical kind. This was surprise that hurt. Daniel's mouth opened and closed. Claire's phone buzzed, but she didn't look. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered every birthday that had been a footnote. I remembered my mother asking me, 2 months earlier, "Do you ever want to be recognized?" As if asking was sufficient. That question had been a brush-off, not an action. "Here's the deal," I said, and laid down the part that was my revenge and my revolution at once. "You wanted answers after you saw a picture of a car. You wanted to know why I did something loud. The answer is because loud things are the only language you hear. So I spoke it. But speaking it doesn't mean I'm asking for your applause. I am asking for a change." I slid another print toward them. This one was simple text, bullet points I'd prepared. 1. Acknowledgements. A public post from each of you addressing me, not just a like. 2. Monthly dinner. No phones at the table. Committed attendance. 3. If promises are broken twice, I'll limit contact to holidays until you show sustained effort. It read clinical and petty and fair all at once. Daniel laughed. Thin, forced, but it had the wrong timing. "You can't make us," he started. "No," I agreed. "I can't make you anything. I can only decide what I will accept. Consider this me deciding." That was the payback. Not to humiliate, not to retaliate financially, but to convert their preferred currency, public performance, into the price of admission. If they wanted me back in the family center, they'd have to put in their own muscle. They'd have to make the kind of visible commitments they'd already demonstrated they could make for themselves. I was saying, if you want my presence, earn it the way you earn everything else, publicly and consistently. Charlotte's face crumpled, and Henry finally found his voice, small and raw. "Peggy, we're sorry. We don't want you to leave." "I am not leaving," I said. "I'm rearranging the furniture so you feel where I sit. I am recalibrating expectations. I love you all. But love isn't automatic. It's also an action. Prove it." My brother's defenses broke on the rocks of the slideshow and the table, and the careful, patient, "I will accept nothing less than the thing I've been asking for." There were apologies, real, messy ones that weren't polished for Instagram. Daniel mouthed the words. Claire's phone finally went face down, and my parents' hands clutched each other, like they were trying to stitch up something they hadn't realized was ripped. We talked until the cupcakes crumbled into evidence on the coffee table. We talked about the small things. The time Dad forgot my kindergarten recital because he'd read an email about Daniel's promotion. The way Claire would announce hers on Facebook and never call. I told them about the way it felt to plan a party for my kids and not have any of them show up on time. They told me about struggles I'd never known, ways their brains had been trained by habit as much as by carelessness. There were moments of genuine illumination and also the kind of defensiveness that needs time to dissolve. When the meeting wound down, there was something I hadn't expected, a real plan. Charlotte volunteered to organize the monthly dinners. Henry promised to set a calendar reminder on paper, the old-fashioned sort, and call if he missed it. Daniel's apology was awkward and deep. He said something about being ashamed of his own reflexes to perform rather than be present. Claire, slower, offered to start with a public acknowledgement the next day. Not a like, not a comment, but a post that said, plainly, "Peggy, thank you for being you," with a photo of the two of us from when we were kids, and my hair was awful and she'd held my hand like an anchor. They meant it, or at least they meant the first steps of it. That was enough. I didn't need grand gestures. I needed the possibility of repair that felt real, not PR. I left their house with a different kind of quiet. It was not the quiet of being unseen. It was the quiet of someone who had stated terms and been heard. The car gleamed under the streetlight like a small, private trophy. James met me at the driveway with an expression that said he'd watched the whole thing from the sidelines and been impressed by the play call. The kids ran up to the porch and clambered into the back seat. And for a moment, all the noise of family dynamics fell away into something simple. A father trying to stack toy blocks in the dark, children complaining about the delayed ice cream, a mother with a throat full of honest words. The revenge, if that's what you want to call it, was not a dramatic punishment. It was an insurance policy against invisibility. It was making their preferred language, the public performance, work as a genuine currency for me, not just something they spent on themselves. It was forcing them, gently but insistently, to use the tools they already had to show they cared. Driving away, the city lights smudged into a watercolor of other people's lives. I turned the radio up and sang along badly, the way you do when you don't want silence to go on too long. It felt strange and good to be both seen and in control of how I chose to be seen. The revolution wasn't televised. It sat in the passenger seat, leather warm, and hummed quietly while I steered us toward home.